This is Afternoons with Mark Leishman in for Jesse Mulligan. He'll be back next Monday. But time now to talk about all things KiwiSaver with Mary Holm. She's here with her fortnightly session. It's your money, of course. And this week it's timely to be having a look at your plans, as the annual statements should have been sent out to all members. KiwiSaver-wise, Mary's with me now. Hi, Mary, kia ora, welcome along once again.
Kia ora, Mark. Thanks very much.
So the statements, the KiwiSaver statements should have arrived?
Yes, I think so. And if they haven't, they should certainly be coming in the next week or so to everybody who's in KiwiSaver. So they get an annual statement once a year. And it's really worth having a quick look at some of the numbers on there. I mean, they give you basic numbers like what your balance was a year ago and what it is now. Oh, I suppose it's at the end of March, I think, to be honest. I'm not sure.
Yes.
So beginning and end balances, and then all the money that went into your fund from the different sources, you and the government and perhaps your employer, and all the money that went out as fees and taxes and so on. And of course it tells you what particular fund you're in, and some people aren't very up with that, and so it's as well to at least know the provider and the name of the fund. But there's some other information there that I think is even more interesting, and that is that you're going to get a rough estimate of how much money you're likely to have when you turn 65, and also what that means in terms of how much you could be spending each week until you're 90. So it doesn't include New Zealand Super, it's just the money that you would be able to take out of your KiwiSaver account from 65 to 90, and at 90 you'd have no money left. That's what the estimate assumes. And by the way, I should just say, if you find your KiwiSaver balance doesn't have that 65 estimate and the weekly spend estimate, that probably means it's because you changed provider during the year. When that happens, it all gets too muddled, and so they skip that information for a year, and you should get it next year. But zeroing in on the money at 65 and how much you're going to be able to spend from then until 90, they adjust those numbers for inflation. So if it says you'd be able to spend $100 a week, that would buy roughly what $100 buys now, so for a 20-year-old. In fact, by the time they're 65, it might be several $100s. But the point is that it's so that people can look at it and it's a realistic sort of number for them. They're thinking, okay, $100 more a week from my KiwiSaver would be helpful, but maybe not enough.
Yes. Mary, do a lot of people really change regularly their providers, and do they take note of what's going on with KiwiSaver? Do a lot of people just sort of let it sit?
Obviously some do and some don't.
Yeah.
I think when you look at some people's comments about KiwiSaver, I get the impression they were just plonked into one of the default funds and they stayed there and don't even necessarily know which fund they're in. But on the other hand, we've got lots of people who are watching quite closely what's going on, and in fact some people watching too closely. They see their balance going up and down because it will go up and down, and panic about it, and it's actually not a great idea to be watching your account all that closely. But it's a really good idea once a year when the statement comes in to have a look at where you're at. And just zeroing in on that, the money that they're estimating you'll have at 65, they do assume that you'll keep contributing at the same pace as you are now and stay in the same fund, and you'll make no withdrawals until 65, and then just regular withdrawals until through your retirement. So you won't be taking a lump sum out to pay off the mortgage or something like that at 65, or to go on a big trip or something. so they make quite a few assumptions that won't necessarily apply to you. So,
because a lot of people would do that, wouldn't they? They would use the money at retirement and say, right, let's knock off the mortgage once and for all.
Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's obviously a good idea. Better if you've already paid off the mortgage, but if you haven't, it's a really good idea. And another thing that people quite often do when they get to retirement is they say, okay, look, the roof is going to need replacing soon. Let's do that now, and let's get a decent car, and sort of setting themselves up so that they're not likely to suddenly have more big expenses in the next 10 years or so. That's a common thing and totally sensible thing to do.
But what about the younger people who started their KiwiSaver, as most do these days, and with the aim of having money for their first home? They would presumably clear it out for that.
Absolutely, and this calculation doesn't take that into account because it can't, because they're just doing a broad rough estimate for everybody, But so what I'm saying to people, if you are planning to take money out to buy a first home, which is a perfectly good plan, if you go to the KiwiSaver calculator on sorted, then you can key in your own situation, and say, in 10 years' time, I'm hoping to buy a home that might cost roughly this amount, and that sort of, do a much more precise calculation for yourself. So that's a really good thing to be doing. So it's just called the KiwiSaver calculator.
On sorted.org.nz. We'll do it in unison. We'll do it with duet.
Yes.
So, what say the case, though, if you look at that, what you're likely to have at 65 and how much you'll need, and you discover, oh my goodness, I'm going to have nowhere near enough. What should you do then?
Then, well, a good idea is to say, well, okay, can I increase my regular KiwiSaver contributions, which is a really powerful thing to do. A lot of people are on the 3% of their pay going in, which is good, but you can go to your employer and raise it to 4% or 6, 8 or 10% of your pay through your employer. And, if you're finding that you can manage to increase that amount, even just going from 3 to 4 can make quite a big difference to how much you have later on. Or you can, if you want to do a different amount from those 4, 6, 8, 10, or you just have a lump sum every now and then, or just a one-off lump sum, or you might get an inheritance or something like that, then you can just put the money directly into your KiwiSaver provider. Or you can, you don't have to do that through your employer. So it's not complicated. So people sometimes think, oh, help, how do I do this? And therefore don't do it. And all you have to do is contact your provider by phone or email and arrange to find out how you can go about depositing extra money and directly to the provider. It should be easy.
And you can go, once again, does Sorted give some sort of idea of, telling you if you increased, say, 2, 4% or 6%, how much difference that would make? Can you work that out easily?
Yes, it does. The sort of KiwiSaver calculator is good at that kind of thing. It says, okay, I want to make it 4% or I want to put in $10 more a week or something like that. And the calculator will tell you how much more you're likely to have at retirement if you do that, and how much more you're likely to have spending in retirement if you do that. So it's a really good idea to get onto that calculator and play around with it and just say, well, what if I do this? What if I do that? And then another thing that the calculator also opens as a possibility is switching to a higher risk KiwiSaver fund. So not very many people are in the highest risk category funds. When we say risk, not the right word really. It's the highest volatility funds, the ones that go up and down more. Yes. They're not risky in terms of you losing all your money. You're almost certainly not ever going to lose all your money in the KiwiSaver fund. No. There'd be something very wrong if that happened. But the higher risk ones your balance is going to go up and down more, but over the long term it will grow more. It always does. It always will.
So it's the old risk and reward. If you're prepared to put a punt on it in essence and go a wee bit riskier, then the payoff is much better.
That's absolutely right. Yes.
But the loss is also much better if it doesn't go your way.
Well, over the long run, it will go your way. If it's 10 years or more, it's almost certain to go your way. And if it's 15 years or more, it always has. When you look back in history at what's happened to funds like this over periods, they certainly go down, and sometimes a long way. They have halved at times, these sort of funds, the value. So, you're tootling along at $100,000 balance and it goes down to 50. And, of course, that is incredibly worrying for anybody.
Yes.
That's very unusual, but that's the kind of thing that happened in the 87 share market crash. The value of investments was halved. But if you stick with it, if you just go to the beach and ignore it, it'll come back up. It always does. It will. But Marco, one thing I say to people sometimes, if they're thinking, all right, I'll try it a bit riskier in my KiwiSaver fund, knowing that I'm almost certain to have more in retirement, but I'm not sure I can cope with the ups and downs. Then what you can do is just put, say, quarter of your money, or a small proportion, even just 10% of your money. Go to your provider and say, I want to put 10% more into a riskier fund, and do that, and then
see how it goes.
So that'll kind of water down the total effect of market ups and downs. Because it'll only be happening to a small portion of your money. And then, after a while you might see that, yes, when it does go down, it does come back up again and move some more over. And so you can gradually, switch from being low to moderate risk to higher risk in steps like that. Yeah.
Of course, a lot of people, you put the money in, you know that you're not going to be able to touch it until you're over 65, and some people will probably think, I'd rather spend it now, actually. That's the dilemma, isn't it?
And that's human nature.
Yes.
Now it's better than later. Yes, and I haven't got any sort of clever response to that, except to say that later will be now at one point.
And it comes very quickly, as you probably know.
As you and I know, not being 20 years old anymore, that
thankfully.
It does. It's amazing how quickly it comes around, and it is really nice to be able to relax and enjoy your retirement. I get a lot of letters to my Herald column which suggest that you don't need to have a heck of a lot of money in retirement, but it's certainly nice to have, a chunk of money there over and above New Zealand super to help you relax and really have a nice, enjoyable time.
Because it's interesting that it ends at 90 effectively, and a lot of people, of course, these days are living well past 90. So I guess that premise of you don't need a lot after 90, I suppose that's where that rings true. Yes,
it's once again I see in letters that people send me to my column that the vast majority of people, by the time they get to 90, are just not spending very much money anymore. Quite a lot of them are having a nice time, but they're not doing big travel and they're not going out as often. And a lot of them say New Zealand super is enough at that point if they've got their accommodation taken care of. If they've got a mortgage-free home or similar, then they don't find they're spending more. And in fact, quite a lot of people get to 85 or 90 with quite a few $100,000 of savings still, and they're just not spending it. They just find they're not. And the other thing is, if you've got a mortgage-free home at that point, you can then, that's a good time in your life to have a reverse mortgage, which is not so good when you're younger because the interest compounds on it. But once you get to 90, there probably aren't going to be that many more years.
Who cares?
Yes, yeah.
And I
So,
suppose the other lesson I'll take out of this is your advice, if the KiwiSaver balance is lower than last year, just hang in there because it will come around.
Yes. And people will see that. They'll see their balance this year and their balance last year. And, for a number of people will see the balance is lower. And that's a bit of a jolt, really. But just hang in there. One other just quick point I just wanted to make. Another move you can make if you are looking at your numbers and thinking you're not, you'd like to have a bit more by 65, is to move to a lower fee provider. If you go onto the KiwiSaver Fund tool on KiwiSaver Fund Finder, it's called, on Sorted, it'll tell you which funds at your risk level charge lower fees.
Right.
And over the years, that can make quite a big difference to how fast your savings grow. So that's just one more idea for people.
Fantastic. Lovely, Mary. Thank you so much for, spreading the word and your wonderful wisdom. And we really appreciate it. And we'll be back with Jessie in a couple of weeks.
Great. Thanks very much, Mark.
Cheers. Mary Holm there on Your Money. This is RNZ Afternoons.